Hello, welcome back. It's Thursday. It's one day closer to the weekend. It's an exciting thing. Thanks for joining us on our virtual happy hour. I'm your host, founder Greg Ovola of Untapped. We're super excited you're here. Before we get started with our guest today, I want to remind you about our 10th anniversary celebration. October is the month. October 22nd is our official 10-year anniversary. We're putting together a mini documentary that we want to be able to showcase to you on our anniversary party date on October 24th from 3 to 6 p.m. We want you to share your stories of how you found Untapped, any life stories that may have changed. We've heard some great stories from everyone else around the globe here. We want to be able to showcase those in our documentary. So go over to untapped.com/10/stories to find all about how to submit your stories there. In addition, we're also having a special badge that we're going to be giving away during the actual live stream event that we want you to design. So check out the contest at untapped.com/10/contest. If you want to see all information about what beers are being brewed and all the amazing things about our party, head over to untapped.com/10 for all the information. So with that out of the way, I want to bring in my guest tonight, Alyssa Thorpe, a head brewer over at Jagged Mountain Brewery. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an exciting time to be a brewer, and it's an exciting time to be on this show. So we're excited to have you all around. So before we get started with that, let's talk about what we're drinking tonight. Obviously, with Untapped Virtual Happy Hour, drinking is the most important part. And you got a brand new beer, I think, that we're going to be talking about today. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so I am drinking our new fresh hop beer. This is actually one of two large batch fresh hop beers that I did this year, just because I love to brew them so much. But this is a double IPA that I brewed with all 100% Strata hops from Crosby Hop Farm. We got them shipped overnight and brewed with them literally the same day. We got them like maybe 2 hours right before I put them in the kettle. So Strata personally is one of my favorite hops. It has like massive strawberry and pineapple notes, and you rarely get that in a fresh hop IPA. But out of this one, it's super tropical. You don't get a lot of the grassy notes like you tend to. It's great. It's one of my favorite beers that we have on tap now, and I'm super proud of it.
Awesome. And we talked earlier before the show today. We were like, hey, this beer is like brand new. There's not even a label for it, and there's like no check-in. So like we're just going off the rails here from that perspective there. So very cool stuff on that side. Now, for me, I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. So when I saw this beer on the shelf, I had to try it. This was the Gigawatt 3.0. This is from Broadbrook Brewing, which is located in Suffield, Connecticut. It's a double IPA, double dry hopped, weighing in at, I believe, around 8% for an alcohol. So it's a Mosaic and Citra, one of my two favorite hops from that perspective. So I'm super excited to try this one out. It's relatively new. So if you're out there as well, we'd love to hear what you're drinking. So if you want to use the comment on your chat platform, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We'd love to hear what you're drinking, and make sure you always check those beers into Untapped. So I'll crack it open right now. You've already beat me to that process of having it in your glass from that side. So I'll try to pour this pretty quickly as we can get into it. But make sure you check into it on Untapped and let us know in the comments what beer you're drinking for this happy hour itself.
The trend seems to be double IPAs. We're both drinking that, so.
Yes, exactly. Well, it is Thursday. We're trying to get our way through to the weekend, so That's a good way to put it there. So cheers. Thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks everybody for joining in. Awesome. So let's get right into it. Obviously, we talked a little bit about how you're part of the brewery itself, but maybe a little background how you got started. We were joking before we got on the air here about how I visited your brewery about 2 years ago, which is when you kind of started your kind of role there. But a little background of where you are now and how long you've been at the brewery from that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of started my brewing career about 5 years ago. I started as a home brewer, started in my third-story apartment, like literally brewing on my stove, which seems crazy right now thinking back on it, but enjoyed it so much. Actually won a bunch of awards as a home brewer, so was looking at the time to kind of switch my careers. I was going to school to be a nurse at the time, and I wasn't super into that. So I was like, you know what? Beer is not very stressful. It's a lot of fun, and I seem to be pretty okay at it. So I decided to pursue that as a career. So I went to Regis University here in Denver, and they have an applied craft brewing program that I went through. I was I think I was the second round to go through that program. So it was still pretty fresh, but really good for my career, obviously. And my first brewing job was at a tiny little microbrewery called Mew Brewery, which they are no longer in business. Um, worked there for a little bit. And then I like to say my first real like place that I learned a lot was at Lone Tree Brewing Company here in Lone Tree, Colorado, and worked there for a little over 2 years. And, they were a pretty big production brewery that did cans and, outside sales and distribution to multiple states. So I learned a lot in a short period of time. But my heart is stuck on being creative. So I wanted to kind of get away from that and go to something a little bit smaller. And luckily they hired me at Jagged Mountain, and I've been the head brewer here ever since.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, if you're joining us late, we're talking to Alyssa Thorpe, who is the head brewer at Jagged Mountain Craft Brewery. If you have a question for her and you want to put her on the hot seat there, or just ask her any question related to brewing, I'm sure she'll be able to answer those without even thinking about it. Use your chat platform, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and be able to ask those questions, and we'll try to get them on the screen for her to answer from that side. So we're really excited about that. Obviously, you talked about home brewing to head brewer. You obviously started brewing 5 years ago, like you mentioned, but obviously you've won some awards. What's the biggest transition that you had to make from going from the home brewery side as a passion project to going into a commercial brewer?
I think for me personally, it was my mechanical abilities. I didn't really have that kind of instilled in me. Even when I was a kid, there's a lot of boys that grow up and their dads teach them how to fix things. And of course, I didn't have that. So that was honestly like the biggest jump for me, is trying to learn how to actually fix things in a smart way, and like use a wrench in the proper way, And I'll be honest, it's still a daily struggle, but I'm much better than I used to be. But that was definitely the biggest change or leap that I had to make.
Awesome. Well, we've got a great question here from Eddie, and Eddie asks, do you feel the UK craft breweries have a big part in the craft market in the United States, the same way that US craft beers have a big part in the UK market?
I personally, no. I feel like I don't see a ton of UK craft beer over here. I think I enjoy UK beer. Like, we have one of the best pubs here in Colorado called Hogshead, and they are kind of an English pub style place that does only cask beers. So I would love to see more of that, because it's one of my favorite breweries. But honestly, I don't feel like you guys are represented that much at all.
I 100% agree with you. When I read this question, I kind of assumed that's what your answer would be. But I think we see a lot more influence from US going over to the UK. A lot of breweries are trying to do that kind of tradition, but we don't see a lot of the Colonel or the good breweries out in the UK area bringing their stuff over to the United States. Hopefully, I'd love to see that more often, because it makes some great stuff over there. But
absolutely,
just a matter of time from that side.
Yeah.
Well, here's a great question here from Kurt, and again, it leads to our next kind of area of talking about Southern Beer Girl, and it's a great question here. And asks, any Southern influences in your beers you brew, given your title, Southern Beer Girl? Maybe a little bit about how that came to be, and then answering this question from your influences there.
For sure. So it's kind of confusing, because my title is Southern Beer Girl on Instagram, but I actually moved from Texas, where I was born and raised, here 5 years ago, to Colorado. So when I started my Instagram page, I was still a little bit missing Texas, and missing family and missing a lot of things about it, which I still do. But so that's where the Southern part comes in, because that is my heritage 100%. And, the influences that's provided me as a brewer, I think I really appreciate lagers in a different way than a lot of other people do. My family is all German. I grew up very beer centric. They're, going to Oktoberfest every single year. And it's all centered around lager. And that's truly what I love to brew. I love to drink lager. And I think that really came from growing up in Germantown in Texas.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of lagers now. I mean, everyone will tell you that they love the hazy trains and the IPAs, and I do. But sometimes bringing yourself back from that lager pilsner perspective always gives you a refreshing taste of what beer. That's what we used to have all the time from that perspective there. So it's definitely cool from that side as well. Another question that got popped up here in the chat. This one is from the Brewer's Master 66, Kyle, and they said, "What's your best advice from a home brewer looking to move into more of a commercial brewing? I've started an apprenticing at a local microbrewery, but want to expand my skills as well."
I would definitely, especially in times like this where I think it's probably really hard to get in somewhere, I would recommend some kind of formal education, just because that is going to give you the leg up from everybody else. And if it's something, it shows that you're serious about it, that you're not just wanting to have fun and drink beer, that you actually want to learn and want to, that you're dedicated and you're willing to spend money on a degree or whatever to get your foot in the door. And I think that really does make a difference. It sure did make a difference for me.
Strong advice. I think obviously now with COVID and stuff like that, there's not a lot of positions open up, and school is an opportunity for getting your leg up while this COVID thing decides to work its way out. Obviously, with kind of your Southern heritage, your kind of unique style, I know that you have a small kind of a batch system at Jagged Mountain that you kind of do some experimentation. What are some of the funkiest things you've kind of, been inspired to brew? One that comes to mind is your Blue Mountain Blast beer, which is a very unique perspective. But what goes into that process of trying to come up with interesting kind of ideas for your beer?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, 99% of the time it's semi-buzz conversations with our regulars at the bar. Or just actually Blue Mountain Blast was done with a friend who used to brew at a brewery called Blue Tile. And I think I had posted on my Instagram something about eating Taco Bell, and he brought it up and was like, "If you're ever interested in brewing a Blue Mountain Blast, let me know." And I was like, "Count me in." So, I love brewing traditional lagers and I love sticking to rules, but I also really love to break them at the same time and just do crazy stuff, because at the end of the day, it's beer and you're supposed to have fun with it, right? So
exactly.
But no, yeah, I love doing all the crazy stuff as long as it tastes good, know.
Doesn't matter what color it may be in this case, of the kind of yellow or green tinge from that perspective. It's a matter of how people enjoy that product. I think we've been seeing that a lot in the brewing industry, of trying to break those boundaries of traditional ingredients and traditional styles. And, right now everyone's just trying to figure out a way to get people in the door. So, for lack of a better word. So that's definitely something interesting on that side.
Yeah.
All right, let's pick another question from the audience here. This one, let's see. We'll go with Vance. And Vance said, "Listen, my favorite IPAs are white. I don't see a lot of white out there, and when I do, they don't seem to last very long. Have you ever noticed that, or if there's your take on it? I finally got the Chainbreaker white IPA recipe from Deschutes and use that often."
That's a great question. I've never brewed a white IPA before. My assumption is that it's cross kind of between a Belgian wit and an IPA. But you just don't see them a lot. And I think it's probably one of those styles that a lot of people actually don't know what it even is. I think they probably see, like, I think Avery Brewing does a white IPA maybe, but I don't know. I sometimes don't like to blend two styles like that into one, just because I think that you're not giving a good representation of both of those beers, but they're together. I say that, but we do a blonde stout. I don't know. I think it just takes education and probably just people saying, "Hey, this is like really freaking good," and just demand, probably.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do too with probably just, again, demand is the biggest thing from that perspective there. Obviously, we'll throw some of this on the screen right here. This one's from Travis. Jagged Mountain, my favorite. I need to get back there soon. That's pretty cool, Travis. Thanks for sharing that. Yes, it was definitely a cool tap room when I was there. The thing about tap rooms in Denver when you're there for GABF. We're just talking about that in the pre-show, how this is GABF week. This is what we usually do every year. And it's just a weird concept not to have it, but you're always trying to hit as many breweries as you can, especially with the area. You guys are one of the closest ones, I believe, to the convention center. So it's a really easy way to kind of like, all right, I'm done with the whole festival scene. Let me just sit down and enjoy a good beverage. It's very, very close from that perspective. That's very, very cool.
Yeah. Our tap room is also really great too, because we're in the middle of downtown, but we're also very chill. I feel like you walk into the tap room and it's not crazy, people aren't standing in lines, everybody's just hanging out like it's like a local neighborhood brewery.
That's exactly the vibe. I was about to say that before I took a sip of beer. That's exactly what I describe it as, being a very neighborhood friendly like environment, not where you're going to walk in and have to like be all the way against the wall to try to get by somewhere or something like that. So let's go to another question here from Gary. And Gary said, I'd love to see more female brewers. Do you have any issues when starting off with regards to competing with the male brewers?
I think that I don't know in terms of competing with male brewers in that sense. I think I just had a hard time, even after graduating from my program at Regis, I had a hard time landing a job in the Denver beer scene. I think a lot of it, honestly, for me, that helped me a lot was networking and just talking to people. I don't know if I was competing with anybody. I'm sure that was a factor, but I just kept trying and tried to show that, hey, like I'm serious about this and I can do pretty much anything any of these other guys can do. So.
Yeah, exactly. I read in one of your interviews with other people that you're relatively short. People seem to think that you can't carry things from that perspective because you're 5'1", but you never judge a book by a cover from that perspective too. So it's all about your craft and being able to kind of do that from that side as well. You mentioned before about education. I think that's a very interesting point about being educated about this process. A lot of people maybe may not even be aware that there are educational programs when it comes to the brewing side. So it's always good from that piece as well.
Definitely.
Here's a question from Jay. You said you're from the South. What are your favorite Texas breweries?
Ooh.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. I have a few. So I'm from North Texas, so I can really only speak to that area because South Texas is like practically a whole nother country at that point. But North Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a new brewery that just opened up called False Idol. I believe they're in North Richland Hills. I might be wrong. But they're awesome. The head brewer there actually came from Colorado. So he's making some great beer down there. I also really love Petticolas. Is an awesome brewery. They just like consistently put out incredible beers. And let's see, Celestial is also really awesome. I actually did a collab with them, I think last year. We did a hazy IPA together, and they're one of the few breweries in North Texas that are really jumping on the hazy IPA train, but actually doing like a really good job at it.
Well, people always jump on the hazy IPA train. It's a question of exactly what you said. Is it any good? Because everyone seems to be able to make it. So those are a good list of North Texas breweries. It's funny that you mentioned Southern Texas is a different country. I get a good laugh about that.
I mean, Austin, I hear, has amazing beer, but I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. So
it's weird when you say, different parts of the state. I'm from Connecticut, relatively small state. We can drive 4 hours and we'll go through about 4 different states. But, Texas is so large. When you say I've never been to Austin, that's like saying someone that lives in Massachusetts has never been to Boston before. It's just a very weird kind of concept. But yeah, definitely, it's a wide range of styles. And I think that's really cool about localized breweries, that everyone has their own kind of look and feel and makes it unique. Like you said, a neighborhood brewery, that's kind of the way to put it. So
definitely.
We're talking about hazy IPA. This is a great question here from Cornell. It says, what's the emphasis on different styles of beer? Why is there so much emphasis on hoppy heavy IPAs?
I'm assuming that he's talking about hazy IPAs. I think, honestly, I've never been a hazy IPA hater. I think it's an approachable style. I think it has a lot of different elements that a lot of different people like. And, it has the hop profiles that the hop heads like. It has like the sweetness and the drinkability that people that don't necessarily are fans of IPAs like. And I think, all of that combined, people kind of approach it as, like a super drinkable beer. And it's interesting. I think they can be really complex, and you really get to see the profiles of the hops, which, in a lot of beers, you don't get to see that.
I think it's very interesting how you brought that up in a sense with an approachable beer. I think that, hazy IPAs have become this style that if you're not big into the very, very hoppy kind of bitterness, West Coast kind of piney IPA, you can get on this train and enjoy this kind of juicy, fruity IPA without that kind of bitterness. I think it's just, it's more of a, in my opinion, and I'll love your thoughts on this as well. It's a style to get more people drinking beer that maybe are not a huge, I don't like lagers, but I don't like this, but I like juicy kind of off flavored IPAs. I think that's a great way to kind of do it.
Yeah, we see it all the time here at Jagged. We have a bunch of people being downtown. They come in group parties, and there's bound to be that one or two people who are like, I just don't really like beer. Like, what can you give me? And 90% of the time, they put a hazy IPA in front of them, even if they say explicitly, I do not like IPAs. And they're like, oh my God, what is this? This is so good. So
I think it should. Yeah, the IPA part of that is misleading. There are some hazy IPAs that are very hoppy, but majority of them are less on the hoppy side, more on the juicy side.
For sure.
And that's kind of crazy that you'd have that reaction. I'd always assume that you go over a lighter beer or a lighter lager from that perspective, but people always jump on that juicy train. Sours is another thing that we see as well. You guys make any sours on your side that you see that kind of another entry level perspective for people that may not be into beer, but like wine or other variants?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was about to say, if there's any like wine lovers, I think we have like 4 or 5 kettle sours on right now. And we have a ton of people that just come in and only drink our kettle sours. They don't drink any other beer but that. So, it's the same thing with kettle sours or any sour in general. It's different and it's more approachable to some people.
Yeah. It's just a different type of drink. And I think that's what some people they think about beer as a one-minded perspective, where there's a single kind of, it's got hops and all that stuff, and it tastes like a beer, but a sour is very different. So, speaking of flavor, it's a great question here from John. And John asks, food and beer are natural partnerships. What are some of your favorite foods to enjoy with some of the beers that you make?
Oh, man. Okay, this is going to really take me back to my Texas roots, but I really, really love to grill and drink just the cleanest lager ever.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Like anytime I grill in the summer, I have a beer with a koozie. I don't even pour it outside of the can, I'm not going to lie. And I just drink it and grill, and that's my favorite. And to eat, obviously, my grilled food, but yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that specifically on, grilling, and, people always say, lagers are light. When I'm mowing the lawn or it's hot outside, like that is just the perfect beer for me.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it meshes so well with what the food pairings are and kind of the hot atmosphere. So I'm in your backyard for that. That's for sure. So, ultimately, you talked about your Southern Beer Girl Instagram, but how did it all get started from that perspective? Why Instagram as your kind of network as choice when you wanted to go out there and create this brand?
I've always been a person that takes just many pictures all the time of everything. So when Instagram popped up, obviously I was on board for that. I started posting. I actually have a personal Instagram account that I started posting like my homebrewing adventures on. And I noticed that they started getting like a lot of likes right out the gate. And so I was like, I could see an opportunity here. So I'll start something separate. That way, like my family and friends are not seeing, me just brewing all the time. I started Southern Beer Girl at first just to be like, I'm a home brewer. Here are the beers that I drink in Denver. Come with me and see just my journey, I guess. And it just really kind of exploded from there. I've had some followers that have been following me since before I was even a professional brewer, which is incredible because that's a span over 5 years. But yeah, it's definitely been a journey.
That's for sure. Obviously, when we're talking about home brewing and actually, experimenting with different styles and things like that, it's a great question from Hef Chef here. Have you ever experienced with chili peppers in your beer? I'm not a huge spice guy myself. Anyone knows me will tell me that I think Chipotle is too spicy, so that's really crazy for anyone. But have you experienced with those styles before, and what's your kind of inspiration for using that?
Yeah, I mean, here at Jagged, we have definitely experimented a lot with chili peppers. Green chili is like a huge thing here, being close
Mhm.
to New
Yep.
Mexico. We get a ton of that. But last year, we actually got our hands on a hot sauce barrel
Hmm.
that we were able to age a beer into, which was awesome because it was a local company that was, I think, from the mountains somewhere. And they ferment their own hot sauce in these barrels, and then they don't have anything to do with them afterwards. So I was like, yeah, let's try it out. That sounds pretty good. So it's actually my assistant brewer, his recipe. He actually brewed into that, and it was fantastic, honestly. And we had so many people come out for that release and buy the bottles afterwards, and it was great.
I remember at GABF one year, I had a friend who was from a journalist from Mexico, and I had never had green chili. Obviously, you
Oh,
described me like having a heart attack pretty much when I go to Chipotle. He was having me try all these beers with green chili. I thought I was going to die. That is very, very spicy, but incredible flavor. Even though there
oh
was a
yeah.
lot of spice on there, the
Hmm.
amount of flavor that it had it was something I can't really describe. Being someone that doesn't like spice that much,
Oh, for
but I
sure.
definitely appreciate it for sure as from that side, but probably
Yeah,
not again anytime soon.
growing up in Texas, we didn't really I didn't know what green chili was, I don't think. I
Yeah,
just knew like salsa and peppers and whatever, but I came
yeah.
to Colorado and I was like, what is this magic? So good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in case you're joining us late, we're talking to Alyssa Thorpe, who is the head brewer at Jagged Mountain Craft Brewery. If you have a question about brewing or just beer in general or just styles or anything, maybe you want to ask a question about the weather, we're going to put it up on the screen. Maybe. I can't say for everything. But ask a question in your favorite chat, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. We'd love to be able to ask some questions from here. Ultimately, we talked about aspiring brewers and how you kind of coming up in the system. We talked about education there. Um, you know, do you think this is a new thing that a lot of colleges and education are going to look to do in the future? Because there's not a whole lot of them that have these programs out there now. There's obviously a lot in Colorado because really a lot of breweries in that area. But do you think that's an expansion for most educational areas into this new area of brewing? Or is it something that's going to be localized for the areas that are really prominent when in breweries in that area?
That's a great question. I think most education outlets will probably look into it just because a lot of people are interested in it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of scary thinking about that because there's really, when you think about it, not that many breweries. If you're only hiring one or two brewers per brewery, you're not really, it's not fair if you get an education and you literally cannot find a job. So it's interesting, but I'm always a proponent for education because I think it does nothing but help. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years.
That's for sure. Speaking of your brewing experience, this is a great question from David. So, if you could describe your experience as a brewer in one or two words, what would it be? It's this question I love to ask because everyone's like, "Oh, come on, really?"
Oh, that's
Uh,
tough. Uh, man, this is gonna sound really pessimistic, but I'm gonna say a constant fight.
Interesting. I'm not sure whether to ask why or just leave it at that. So
No,
there
it's
we
not, it's
go.
not that bad. No, I would say just probably pursuing passion is it
Mhm.
would probably be the best words to say about that. I went into it because I loved it, and
Mhm.
here I am still because I love it.
There you go. I like it. I'm getting already flamed in the chat right now for saying Chipotle is too spicy. But look, if you knew my personal spice level chart, you know, it's the truth. I would just have a heart attack and die probably. Awesome. Let's see if there are any more questions here in the chat here. Here's one from Miles. Miles asks, any favorite breweries from Canada? We get a lot of people from the north, the great north up there. Anything you can share on that avenue?
That is a great question. I have never been to Canada. I the closest I've been is probably Washington. So
Mhm.
I've never been. I can't say that I've had many Canadian beers, honestly. I've met a
Mhm.
lot of Canadian brewers through like GABF or CBC or whatever, but yeah, I've never the closest thing I've had is Molson. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm actually the same way, Miles. I've never been up to Canada for a beer specifically. I may have been up when I was younger, but obviously not of legal drinking age, even though it's even lower up there. But it's the same thing from the UK question earlier in the conversation. I think a lot of beers get shifted up to Canada from the United States, but not a lot come back in from that perspective. And as a person that loves different flavors and different experiences and cultures, I love to see it reverse, because there's probably some great beers in the Toronto area that's very, very close to the United States, and the eastern area that would be great, probably stuff in the United States. So I'm looking to try it, hopefully. And maybe when we're able to travel again, we'll go up to Canada. But right now, I can't really do that. So, speaking of COVID from that perspective there, how is your brewery working from this situation there? Are you guys doing delivery or pickup, or what are the things you're doing to kind of keep things moving on your brewery front?
Yeah, when COVID first hit, we were hitting hard with delivery just because our whole tap room was completely shut down. We're not necessarily doing a ton of delivery right now, but we did start mobile canning, which was very new for us. Being a pretty small brewery, basically under 500 barrels a year, we never really even thought about it as an option, but we had to because of COVID. Right. Denver is great in terms of the people that are here adhering to like the mask rule and everything. So we've, implemented social distancing in our tap room. Unfortunately, we don't have an incredible patio being really downtown. But yeah, just really trying to get our beers in cans has been the biggest focus. We've been going through this outlet called beerdrop.com. Which I
subscribe to that. So hopefully I'll get some of your beers from there.
Yeah. So they, ship out our beers all around the country, which is incredible. Whereas before we were hyper local, Denver only, we did maybe a few like keg accounts, but no cans. So it's an interesting year. I never thought that I would go back into packaging, but craft canning has been awesome. The mobile canning thing, they take care of all of it. So it's been a great experience so far.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for being on the show this evening. I had a blast. It almost went by so quickly. So thank you so much for chatting with me. I know the audience obviously appreciated it as well. I want to give you an opportunity at this point to kind of give any last thoughts where people can find you on the internet, or anything you want to share with the rest of the community.
Yeah, so I am Southern Beer Girl on Instagram and on Facebook. I have also done some YouTube things, so you can look that up. I'm the head brewer at Jagged Mountain Craft Brewery in downtown Denver. Would love for anybody and everybody to stop by and try my beer. And if you catch me behind the bar, I'd love to talk about it. So yeah, please come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alyssa. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Awesome. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. It's a virtual happy hour on a Thursday. We're one day closer to the weekend. It's going to happen, guys. Just give it time. Want to remind you as well that we're collecting information about the Untapped 10th anniversary extravaganza party. We're going to be having a mini documentary that will air a trailer during that particular show on October 24th on 3 to 6 p.m. But we want to hear from you. We're doing this all about you. The community is the most important part to what we want to push out there. So it's important for us to hear from you guys in the stories. Head over to untapped.com/10. Check out our badge contest. We're giving you the opportunity to actually to create a badge for the live stream event. Everyone will earn it around the world. It'll be a really cool thing. As well as we want to hear from you and your stories. So there'll be a spot on the page. You scroll down to the bottom. Tell us about your Untapped story and what Untapped means to you. We'd love to feature those stories in our upcoming mini documentary. We've got some great guests coming up next week. On Tuesday, we're going to have Johnny Garrett and Brad Evans, the founders of Craft Beer Channel, on the show next Tuesday. That's 9/29 of September. We're almost done with September. It's amazing. And on Thursday, we're going to have Barry Holmes. You guys may have known him. He's the CEO of the Brewery and Offshoot Beer Company on the 1st of October at 7 p.m. talking all things about the brewery and everything else going there. We really appreciate all your feedback. If you have any questions about the show, people you want to see on there, shoot us an email at media@untapped.com. And we'll see you next Tuesday for a conversation with Johnny Garrett and Brad Evans. And thank you very much for watching. Cheers, everybody.